But here, this was me watching Houston, not just their last 2 offensive possessions, but the final couple minutes in the national championship last night. Houston and Florida. Look at this, dude. We were just talking about in the Final Four how Duke had a graph very, very similar to this, and Houston had the comeback. And now Houston is on the receiving end of this devastation with Florida coming back in the final couple of minutes. Give me your big takeaways and your feelings and emotions from the national championship game last night, dude.
Yeah, look, there's part of me that wants to apologize to Duke fans because we were so hard on them. And the way in which I will apologize is being hard on Houston. Houston fumbled the ball here in the worst way. I get it. Florida has a high-flying offense, and I said it last episode that it's a little amorphous, and they really just ride off the energy of the players and kind of are free-flowing and everything. That's a layman's sort of approach and knowledge of their offensive scheme and everything like that. But that's just what it looks like, and that's exactly what they took advantage of at the end of the game, is they just ratcheted it up to a different level. And Clayton Jr., I wouldn't say he had like the best of games, especially as he's been showing over the past couple weeks, but boy, he came up big time at the end in just delivering the ball when needed, making high energy plays when needed. And it just seemed like Houston, for some odd reason, just couldn't match that level in the last 90 seconds at the very least. So I gotta say, I'm a little surprised because we were so heavy and so hyping them up with their style of play and their practicing and all that kind of stuff, that it didn't come through in the last 90 seconds.
Yeah, because we were talking about who was the team that hit all of the threes a few rounds ago. Was it BYU? No, I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about
how Alabama.
Yeah,
I think they hit 25 threes.
Yes, and it's like, okay, that's hard to recreate. That is hard to replicate from game to game. But your effort and your toughness and kind of the way that Houston plays basketball, you can recreate that and replicate that every single game, because that's just kind of culturally, and you're not relying on being hot or shots falling. And so it was interesting to see them, especially in crunch time, just not be able to get it done. Dude, you were talking about Walter Clayton Jr. I don't think he had a point until like midway through the second quarter. Like Houston, seriously, they did a great job of bottling him up because he had scored 64 points combined in the previous 2 games. But he did show up when it matters. He only finished with 11 points, I think. But he made some, like you said, dude, some really, really big plays. And it's like crunch time matters, man.
Yeah. I think he didn't score until like 8 minutes into the second half, which is nuts to say. But at the end, like, that's why it's so crazy, is he finished incredibly strong. And I have to back up here too. And I don't want to like disparage Houston all that much, because the effort was still there, right? Effort was at top notch, as it always is with Sampson's teams and Houston specifically, as we've been talking about. But the execution is what faltered at the very end. There were turnovers, costly turnovers at that, fouls, you name it. And it just, you can't have those in those crunch times. And that's what separates, obviously, champions from non-champions. And Houston just couldn't get it done in that final stretch.
This play in particular, like, the final 2 possessions where Houston was unable to even create a shot. And when you listen to Kelvin Sampson talk after the game at his press conference, he's like, that was very, very, I can't remember the word that he said. He said it was like unfathomable or something like this, that we were unable to create a shot. And we're watching right here, man, the final play, Emmanuel Sharp, like going up, and Walter Clayton Jr., this is one of his big hustle plays. Like, this was clutch as hell, coming out there and contesting that shot and forcing him to make it's what a heartbreaking way to end the game for Houston, where they didn't even get the chance to get a shot off. And you see the hesitation here on some of these guys. I'm like, this is going to haunt them, dude.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say it's the easiest play to make in basketball, when you have to go full court final seconds and you got to go high energy because you don't have any timeouts, and you can't rest on the fact that you can stop the time and recalibrate and everything like that. But to your point right there, I mean, we're harping on Houston's effort and everything like that. Clayton Jr. right there had an incredible defensive read coming from essentially the block and just closing out closing out and just giving it all right there. And yeah, you're right. Giving the hesitation, making him even for a fraction of a moment, not let that ball loose. Difference of the game, right? A defensive play wins the national championship.
Hey, there you go. Defense wins championships. Well, also just that play, brother, just pump fake it. Look at the space right there. If he just pump fake and took a dribble, oh, there's so much space. But what you said there, the most cliche thing in sports, defense wins championships, but it is true. The interesting thing is like the ideal, if we were to talk about like, okay, what's this game got to look like for Florida to win? And we probably
Mm,
say, okay, it's going to be a fast paced, high scoring offensive game where they score 90 or 95 points. What's this
yeah.
game got to look like for Houston to win? It's got to be a low scoring, gritty defensive game where teams are scoring 60, mid 60s. And it ended up being 65 to 63, but in favor of Florida. And I think the interesting takeaway there is like, Florida was able to win sort of a different type of game. And like that's
Yeah.
always a sign of a good team is like when you can win in different situations like this and you don't only rely on one type of way of having success. And Florida was just able to do that, man. Kudos to them.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are two sides of a coin, right? And with playing down or playing to your competition,
Right.
there's a negative aspect of that where it's like, okay, you may not be hitting or churning at all on all cylinders as you usually would, right? So for Florida, not churning on all cylinders offensively as they normally would. But at the same time, if you're able to win when playing the same type of game as your competitor, to your point right there, your ability to adapt and still come through with a W while not playing your style is incredibly beneficial, as we saw right here. It won you the national championship, and like that's being able to adapt and play in different environments and being able to succeed regardless of that environment is the sign of a great team and clearly a national champion.
Being able to adapt to variability. I got this health tracker, okay, all right? And one of the metrics on there is heart rate variability, and I've learned that I want my heart rate variability to be higher probably than it is right now because the more it is able to adapt and have variety and variability, the healthier it is. We could maybe say the same thing for a sports team. The
Yeah.
higher ability to adapt and play a variety of different types of games, that's healthier for your team. Check this out. Because I mean, we're talking a lot about Houston. We talked a bunch about Coach Sampson here, but Todd Golden, look at this. This is what Florida did in the NCAA tournament. They trailed by 3 to UConn with 4 minutes left.
Mm.
All right, that's not so crazy. But they trailed by 9 to Texas Tech with 3 minutes, by 8 to Auburn at halftime, and then they trailed by 12 to Houston with 16 minutes to go. So they really were able to just come back all the time. And I don't know, dude, what do you think this is? Do you think that this is like a culture coaching thing for teams to be able to come out of these holes like this, or what?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that too in this equation here. I mean, the up Houston being up 12 with 16 and a half to go is a nuts statistic. And I think ultimately Florida only led for 64 seconds throughout that entire national championship game. Granted, like you could take that with a grain of salt because all you really need to win is to lead when the clock is struck 0. You could literally lead for 0 seconds of the game
Sure.
if you hit a
Yeah.
buzzer beater, right? So, I
Mhm.
mean, there's a little wiggle room there with these statistics. But at the end of the day, to your point, it's like, yes, this is emblematic of having fight and drive and determination, as we've been granting to and applauding Houston for having. It's very clear that the teams who make it to this point in the season and in the tournament, they all have it to a certain degree. But it's being able to bring it out when the time calls for it. And clearly, Florida did it time and time again, maybe a little more quietly than we were used to seeing here with Florida or with Houston because they upset, the big bad guys in Duke. But yeah, this is just a case in point. Not everybody who makes it to this point has it within them, and they just brought it out at the right time.
Yeah. What do you make of this conversation that's going on right now about the game, the officiating? Because there's a lot of chirping, a lot of conversing about the referees. And here I'm throwing up the tweet right here that said officiating is making basketball unbearable to watch. Fouls 5-0 Florida. Coach gets a T. Fouls 11-2 Houston since then. Both teams are confused because it looks like the refs are calling the game considerably different than in the first half. There's something to that because in the first half, I think the refs called 4 fouls And in the
Yeah.
second half, was it not over 20? Like
Yeah.
a substantial, maybe 25 fouls, substantially different. And there's just kind of a lot of, here's another one right here. Yeah. 4 fouls called in the first half, 20 and counting with 5 minutes to go in the second half.
That's wild.
What are your thoughts on this, dude? Any sort of credibility to bitching about the ref?
Yeah, I think there's credibility here. If that number were, instead of 4, it were closer to double digits, like 9, then you could say, oh, okay, they had to reel it in a little bit because the play got so aggressive and so out of hand, so on and so forth. But the overcorrection there, I think in the refereeing was just that, an incredible overcorrection, and it stifled the ability for the teams to play at a higher level. And yeah, I wouldn't say it was an offensive slugfest in the first half whatsoever. Both teams weren't playing to their highest capabilities, which could be partly due to the fact that it was a little chaotic and there was a lot of energy. But that's natural in a national championship game. You got you're the jitters are going through the roof, and you've never experienced that before, or at least a majority of these guys haven't. So, at the end of the day, I always bristle and I'm frustrated whenever I see a stat like this, or I see the Zebras kind of commanding or dictating the ebbs and flows of the game, which is super frustrating because the ebbs and flows of the game should be dictated by the level of competition, the energy, and the effort that we've been talking to so much throughout. Now, if it gets egregious, obviously you got to reel it in, but I didn't get the sense from looking at it or watching it last night that was the way it was going.
As a member of the guild, a member of the community, the referees, I have my stripes. I'm with you on some of those points. It's interesting because usually, and granted, I'm talking here from the perspective of reffing youth basketball, not NCAA March Madness tournament basketball, but we're in the same world here. A lot of times you want to kind of set the tone at the start. So I'm a little surprised, like just to make sure the game doesn't get out of hand. So I would always call a little bit more fouls early and be a little bit more ticky-tacky there, and then let the guys play a little bit more late if you were to have one or the other. But we have the exact opposite here, where it's like, okay, you let everybody play early, and then late you really had an impact on the game. But we think of this perspective, kind of the other side. I've always disagreed with the argument the refs should call it the same the whole game. The game changes. Sometimes you need to blow the P to tighten things up. They did, the players adjusted, and we've got an amazing final 12 minutes. Reffing is more of an art than a science. There is some credibility to that. We did get a pretty incredible final 10 to 12 minutes there. And I love the idea of considering refereeing more of an art. I appreciate that. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a soft skill, and the best refs can really bring that out. But I don't think this take deviates too far from what we're already saying here. It's like, yes, at a certain point, if you let it go too long and it gets way too out of hand, you got to reel it back in some way, shape, or form. But calling 20 fouls, which you can make the argument at least half of those were pretty obscure and ticky-tack and so on and so forth. That's different than, hey, you know what? I'm going to tee you up because you're being wild, or the coach is getting way too out of hand. Throwing a tee instead of 20 calls that actually dictate the gameplay can really do the same. It can have the same effect. But when you couple those two things and compound it in that fashion, yeah, we had a great final 10 minutes, but it was dialed back in terms of energy, in my estimation, because of those 20 calls that were previously called.
True. Yeah, there's something to that. Like when you have to have that in the back of your mind, or players have to have that in the back of their minds, then it does. I don't know, you can call it maybe a little bit of an interruption of the flow or the rhythm of the game. And so that is a reality to it. But I just, hey, it's officiating is we've talked about this. Officiating is part of the game in every single game, and they are human. And both teams are subject to the same set of officials. So you can't really complain too much about it.
I'm sorry to beat another dead horse here, but it's like at a certain point you did see a switch in the way the guys that were playing, and there was a hesitancy in their competitive nature. And both these teams playing at such high energy, when there's hesitancy that's implemented or thrown in there by the refs, it takes them out of their game. And we just said, national champions, great teams are able to adapt to situations even like that.
Heart
But
rate variability.
yeah, but it's just frustrating as a fan because you do feel it. It's a real feeling that the referees, a third party, is the one who's dictating that, as opposed to the two teams who are on the floor competing, bleeding, sweating, doing all that stuff, hustling and all that.
Yeah.
That's where we want to see it being dictated, not from a third party.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I mean, basically, you want them to have no impact on the game, you know, to keep the game in line, but
Yeah.
not decide the game or have any sort of impact on the game. What do you think of this, dude? So, Walter Clayton Jr. consoling Emmanuel Sharp after the game. After obviously Emmanuel Sharp with that, I don't want to call it idiotic, but unfortunate play at the end, and Clayton Jr. was the one who defended it and kind of forced him. There he is. He comes over, comes and consoles him a little bit. I think this type of stuff. Are you a fan of this type of stuff, of consoling other players on the other team of your opponent after the game? Do you feel it's genuine? I guess is what I would try to get at, or is it performative?
I the pessimist in me doesn't love it because I want to see like competitors not like one another at all
Uh-huh.
times.
Right.
But I think this is an overall net positive, strictly because it helps give that good sort of role model picture for the kids
Right.
who are learning to play the game at this time.
It can be both. You know, it
Yeah,
can be performative, but also positive and
yeah.
performative. Yeah, I mean,
Because look, the kids aren't seeing that necessarily as performative. Because
no.
as an adult who's been just sullied by the world in some way, shape, or form, like you can have that pessimistic view, but most
Hey,
kids aren't pessimistic, right?
speak for yourself, man. I'm an optimist. Okay, I do see a little bit of performativeness in there, but I'm not. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah.
So there we have it. Florida national champions, Houston. Good effort, boys. What?
You
Yeah,
know
you
what?
got another thing on that game?
Piggybacking off of this because my brain's rolling, and this is something
Okay.
I'll readjust. I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. So what frustrates
Yeah,
me about this is I know it may not be entirely real, so that's why it bothers me.
Scott.
But backing it up, what are your thoughts? I would love to get Mikey here if he were healthy and on this show. I'd love to get his thoughts on this too.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on just the proliferation of guys not being able to get up on their own these days? It's like they always have to be helped up. That's like the teammate element of things that has gone so far and beyond. It's like, buddy, you
For,
have agency. Get up.
okay. 2 points. First of all, if you say I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, this is what a pessimist says. Okay. This is the same thing. Okay. So you're a pessimist if you claim to be a realist. All right.
Hmm.
Binary. It's one or the other. No, not really. Not really. But that's a pessimist in disguise. Two. Okay. I understand. This is, I'm speaking as a guy who a lot of times after I made a tackle and my teammates were around, stuck my arm up. Hey, help me out, man. Help. And I would do it to opponents too. So I don't know if I
But
hate.
why? Explain that. Why?
I'm tired. Tired, man.
No,
Got
no,
up.
no. You were a grown man who made a tackle. You should be able to get up under your own power and will. And that's what frustrates me is I get the teammate aspect of things. Yes, you
Right.
help your brother, you help your teammate and everything like that. But it's sparingly. It doesn't have to be it's becoming a part of the process, which I don't necessarily agree with.
It depends on the situation, the sport, the setting, what time of the game it is in. Okay, like I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that in the first quarter. Okay, or just on a simple little first down play. But if it's a hard drive and we've been on the field for a long time and I'm running around all the time, I'm putting my arm up there and getting helped up. And I'll also do it to opponents. That's more of a psychological play
Different.
right there. That's
Yeah.
different. It's sort of a psychological play. But I don't
I
think
guess
the agency that you're talking about. I think you need to have the agency and responsibility within the play. Now it's a little bit different in other sports, but between plays in football, for example, it's okay to let your guard down a little bit and have your teammate help you up. I don't think it diminishes your agency.
I think when it becomes second nature that you need somebody else to help you up, I think it actually diminishes your agency and it's becoming a subconscious mechanism that you're relying upon as opposed to your own capabilities and your own strength. And yes, you made a play, you may be tired, but that's what the beauty of it is. You're able to get up each and every time that you're hit, and each and every time that you're hitting that wall. It's like, no, I can do this. Yes, I'm part of a team and I continue to push forward. I don't always need this guy to help me up. It's different when the guy comes to you to help you up, but if you're sitting on the ground with your hands up, that looks infantile.
So you wouldn't help me up if we were playing together?
No. I've said it. I said it multiple times to my teammates. I'm like, nah, you're good.
No, I would be so mad at you if you said
Yeah,
it to
but
me.
why? That's the thing is like, dude, great play. I'm like, yeah, man, great play. And then I walk away. It's like, why do I need to help you up?
What if I came up here trying to dap you up? Yeah, what's good, bro?
No, are you dapping me up? Are you dapping me up 20 times in a conversation? That's what it is during a game.
If we're having a sick conversation, like, oh, I'm with that. 20 times could happen, dude. Depends on what we're talking about.
When Mike, the whole time.
When Mike, fist bumping the whole time. When Mikey gets healthy, we will ask him, and we'll see where he falls on this debate of you hating your teammates and not wanting to help them up, and me being a loving teammate who can rely on my brothers.
I don't want you to be coddled. You have the ability to pull yourself up and to get up because you're the one who just made the great play. You have a great capacity and you just need to harness it and get up on your own, under your own will.
There's something there. And there is something there. Last thing I'll say about it, in basketball, people should get up on their own because you're not on the ground that often. Okay. It's very rare and you have very few opportunities. Like, you know what? I can get up on my own. Football, you're on the ground every play. If you're out there making a bunch of tackles and in on the action, you're on the ground a lot. And then maybe you need a little bit of help. So it's actually sport dependent. Can we agree on that at least before we exit this debate?
I would say sport dependent. Yes. But even more granularly, play and situationally dependent.
Both. All right. We'll have Mikey settle this in the next one.
The performative nature just irks me so much.
I do. I'm very bothered by Dude, we were talking to a guy in the NFL, and he was telling us about another very prominent guy in the NFL who I don't even know if the story is that interesting because I'm not giving the names, but there was a very famous clip on Hard Knocks of this player who stayed after practice and did a bunch of bag work and did all this extra stuff after practice. This guy told us, just like, this is so fake, just purely performing for the cameras because he knows Hard Knocks is here. He would never be doing this if they were not filming him. And that just always stuck in my mind. It's just like, performative stuff is just so disgusting.
Yeah. And if I know the person that you're speaking to, which I think I do, I think he's even come out years later saying he's somewhat embarrassed of the performative actions that he was taking. He was trying to be somebody he wasn't, so on and so forth. So there's a nugget of what I'm trying to speak to here that's in that situation.
Everyone outgrows their performativeness at some point. I have this Dan Hurley thing, but I mean, that's a lot on basketball. Dan Hurley did an interview. I mean, we talked about him a bunch where he's just he's basically defending his antics. Do you want to check it out or do you want to go to football?
Yeah. Let's check it out.
All right, here we go. Actually, yeah, because he actually essentially takes a shot at West Coasters. And I have a slight problem with that as a West Coaster. And not so happy with it. What is this? All right, let's see if we got it here. Pulling it up. Dan Hurley, our boy. Here he is. Okay, let's see.
It's just who I am. I mean, I'm from Jersey. Like when you're from like North Jersey, like New York City area, I don't think it's as like offensive to people like outside of that area, like people in the Northeast. I think they understand me more that way. I think there are people though that like live in the Midwest, or maybe if they're from like parts of the West Coast, that they just don't understand human beings like me, that we could get as intense or as emotionally charged, or you could put as much of yourself into a competitive endeavor and then take the results as badly. I mean,
so Scott, you as a Midwesterner, do you consider yourself a Midwesterner, by the way?
Yeah, it's difficult because grew up in the Midwest for the majority of my childhood, though we
Yeah.
moved around quite a bit. I would say at the core, I'm probably a Midwesterner, but I have enough time spent on the West Coast through high school and now
Right.
post grad years and everything like that to where it's like it's this real I'm American.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, either way, he's double insulting you if you're a
Yeah.
Midwesterner and a West Coaster. I'm only getting hit one time right here. He's saying essentially that we don't have the emotional intelligence or capacity to understand Northeastern guys like this, and this is why he's behaving this way, and this is his excuse. We know plenty. We know plenty of. I mean, there's some truth to this. We know a lot of
Yeah.
guys from that Northeast. They're a little bit tougher. They're a little bit harsher. But I don't know. I don't know if your geographical location at birth excuses every type of behavior that he has exhibited this year and previous years. What do you think?
Yeah, look, there's definitely a nugget of truth in what he's saying here.
Yeah.
But I liken it to okay. There's a difference between a Manny Pacquiao type fighter and a Floyd Mayweather type fighter and the big hulking dudes like Tyson Fury and
Yep.
the like of the heavyweights. I would say that like the Northeastern people, they're so used to just like throwing a million jabs on average and just doing that on a daily, and they just have like thicker skin, and that's just part of their nature and being that energized sort of like fast twitch, witty, emotive in their gestures and their words, and they're just always at it. And then you get like the Midwesterners who are more like slow moving, but when they do pop, it's massive. So like a heavyweight hitter and stuff like that. So I think it's just a different style and approach to things. I do have to say though, like there's a difference between being really energized and letting your emotions take the best of you. And I think it's a fine line to walk, regardless of where you're from. And sometimes, yeah, I would say a majority of the US doesn't necessarily understand the energy and the fight that Northeastern people have just in their bones. But at the same time, I don't know if that fully defines and explains the antics on the court.
Right. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to it. I liked your boxer analogy. That was good. It was like a lot of little jabs all the time. You're always susceptible to them, but they're probably not really going to hurt you.
Yeah.
But if a Midwesterner finally gets mad and upset, it's going to be a big swinging hit. What do you got?
Here's another one for you. So I've told my sisters-in-law, which I have many, because my wife comes from a clan of women, and I come from mostly dudes in my family. So there's a difference in the way in which we approach conversations. I've always told them that they're like fencers, right? So they're like sing, 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 on guard, with all of their insults, because it's just like it's fast and comes out of nowhere, and it's like striking. And we are a little more methodical. When things hit the fan, they really hit the fan. So it's like more of broadsword sort of fighting. That's how I've made the analogy with my sisters-in-law and my brothers.
This is good. I like this. We have the Alfieri's. We have no experience with females in the family because we're just like 3 generations of just all guys. I don't know what it is. So we don't have any fencing in our family, but that's also good. I wish that he would I appreciate the emotion. I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've also met 55-year-old, 60-year-old men from New York City and North Jersey and that tri-state area who are really, really tough and emotional, but also can bite their tongue when need be and have a little bit more elegance and deploy their emotions a little bit more strategically, a little bit less like a toddler.
Yeah.
Which is my problem with something about Dan Hurley gives me teenage vibes. He also says like a bunch. I don't know if you noticed that when he spoke for 40 seconds, he said like about 15 times. It was driving me crazy.
It's Valley Girl kind of stuff. And I know I have my own verbal tics and everything as probably coming out in this episode, but I like your take right there. It's like, it's how you let that manifest itself. You can have it and that could be part of you and that could be you, but like being able to let it come out in the proper way is the most important thing.
Exactly. But what do we know? We haven't won back-to-back NCAA titles. Had hilarious fits thrown off as we're walking off the court and losing in the tournament. All right. this is a funny story just as we transition into football. So Coastal Carolina power forward, Colin Granger, he's 6'9", 225. He has signed a contract to play tight end for the Panthers, making the jump from the hardwood to the gridiron. This is really, really interesting, seeing an NFL team taking a shot on a basketball player, especially because we had this conversation about, could NFL guys play in the NBA, or could NBA guys play in the NFL? How would LeBron be if he was in the NFL?
We've seen it in the past with Antonio Gates. I know that Draymond Green even tried to do it with Michigan State. Granted, that didn't turn out well. But there are some guys who, and I think even Anthony Gonzalez, he was infamously an incredible basketball player. And there have been guys in the past who have had those skills and come into the football realm and done really well. Does it happen frequently? No. But I think in this day and age, there's a more of a focus from GMs, scouts, player personnel, employees of different organizations that are looking for guys who have that athletic ability, because the game is changing so much, especially in the NFL and the pass game and everything like that. They're looking for dudes who can get up, grab the ball in the way that a Travis Kelce can do it, a Gronk. Granted, they may not have the blocking skills as those two do, but that is almost a technique that you can try and teach. It's the athleticism that you can't teach.
Yeah, or the fact that he's 6'9". I mean, that's tough as well. You know what's
225
crazy?
is thin, though.
It's way too thin. It's way.
He's got to put 25 on.
He needs to be 6'9", 270, maybe 250, maybe 250. I've converted him into an offensive tackle, because we were guessing if he had any football experience. Look at this. I Googled this. Don't look at my targeted ads. That's private. Carolina Panthers signed college basketball player with no football experience.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I
stand corrected.
We stand corrected here. But, I mean, if they're able to convert a guy like this, and it would be, what's really the difference between going up for a rebound and going up for a jump ball in football? It's at least a similar family of athletic movements.
Yeah, similar. I mean, the physicality, the amount of body and checks he's going to get on his way.
I take it back. Yeah, no, there's something there. But actually, now that I think about it, I was like, okay, it's a lot different than just standing in our basket and going jumping straight up. You're going to be running. You're going to be running routes. I don't know. Yeah. We will see. All right, so that's what we got going into football. That brings us into football. And Scott, I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on with my X algorithm. But I think it just wants me to continue to insult you and your family and your hopes and dreams. Did you see the thing that they brought? There's a company that pulled a Jurassic Park. Okay. Then they brought back direwolf, 10,000-year-old extinct animal. Okay. This was on the cover of Time magazine yesterday. Crazy. And then this tweet was fed right to me. And I thought so muchly of you, Scott. We are literally bringing back species extinct for over 10,000 years before the Cleveland Browns can find a franchise quarterback. I don't, and I'm not looking for these. Okay? They just come. And I don't mean to bash on the Browns, but they just come. Can you defend this in any way? As I always ask you to do.
The algorithm knows you're subconsciously looking for them, so it feeds it to you before you even know it. That's what's going on.
I am a servant to the algorithm, certainly.
Dude, this is absurd. This is absurd and too true. Far too true. Granted, I'm holding out hope, and I know people will be up in arms about the approach and thinking that we're not serious about winning and everything like that if you go the Kirko Cousins route and then getting Travis Hunter and or Abdul Carter in the draft. I don't, you know what? I disagree with that. You know what? We need to get back to a baseline level of getting 500 or more wins here in the very near future. And we've gone the route of going for the big sticky name, the big athletic name, or the hypest name. And that has not done us any good over the past 20 years. So let's get back to basics here.
Yeah, let's get you back to basics. I mean, there's a couple quarterbacks in the draft, and we talked about them here. I mean, you have expressed that you wouldn't be excited about getting like a Shedeur Sanders here. And I'm just going to pull this up because there's recent buzz that actually the highest odds for Shedeur is to go to the New Orleans Saints now. Browns are fourth highest odds. And And so I mean, we don't have to harp too much on the Cleveland Browns situation there. I hope you guys sign Kirk Cousins, but I want to pivot it to the Shedeur conversation, because also Colorado had their pro day. I don't know if you saw, here's a couple of clips for those just listening where it's just some footage of the pro day. And Shedeur, this is so hypercritical. A lot of criticism flying around about Shedeur because of the way he pats the ball before he throws it. And I know in this NFL draft process, the scouts and the GMs and these organizations have to be hypercritical. But there was a lot of conversation around this. What do you think about this, Scott? And did you pat the ball like this when you were quarterback?
Yeah, I probably patted the ball way too often, and that's why I'm not a quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, okay.
No, so I think this is, yes, there's a formula for how to go about throwing the ball. The idea is the more you pat the ball, the slower you're able to get the ball out of your hand, because then you instinctively go back to having your hand on the ball and then releasing. So it's just adding a fraction of a second. So that's always been the case. But at the same time, you look at quarterbacks that are in the league right now. Aaron Rodgers has infamously done this many times, and no one's griping about his ability to sling the ball or the rock across the field. There have been a number of quarterbacks in history that have had great careers who have this slight tick, and it's always something you can work on. I don't see this as being you're damned in the draft for having this slight tick. And in an enclosed environment, that's just, running routes. It's not gameplay. It's not all that. Granted, you can extrapolate and probably think that that's going to increase in gameplay, or at least that's the idea. But at the same time, like I said, this isn't a make or break for me. Nor do I think it's going to be a massive make or break for a lot of scouts, because you have a lot of game footage that you can look to and seeing if he does it in gameplay and doing all that kind of stuff. And then you look at, I hate to go this route, but I mean, shoot, the Masters is on, and I'm super juiced once Thursday comes around to watch that all weekend. And you got Scotty Scheffler, who's breaking the mold of what it is to have your drive swing, and how he releases his hips and lets his back foot slide in the way that it does. So it's like, honestly, if you're a good athlete and you can get away with this, it's like, is that really going to be the sticking point for scouts? Probably not.
Right. No, and we're constantly redefining what the status quo is, or what like the ideal prototype player or technique is for position. I mean, we've seen it like very distinctly with quarterback over the last 15 years of what the ideal quarterback is. And we're much more forgiving of certain habits or techniques that maybe we would have really, really looked down upon in the past. I think, some of the stuff that Mahomes does, people are like, oh, this guy can never play in the NFL.
Exactly. It's all decision making once you get into the league, and delivering the ball. It doesn't matter how you deliver it. You just got to get it there, and you have to get it there in a catchable manner. The only thing that really can be talked about in being a question mark, somewhat of a question mark with Shedeur, would be the fact that, okay, we need to really test out arm strength, because I think a majority of his throws were under a certain yardage throughout the season and so on and so forth. So that may be the only, like, hey, this could affect it if he doesn't have the arm strength. But at the end of the day, it's all about your ability to get the ball where it needs to go. Peyton Manning, infamously, best season of his career, was throwing ducks, but he was putting it in places that only his guys could catch. So it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, if you can do that, you're probably going to have a solid career.
Look at our resident quarterback expert coming in here, hitting a grand slam over here with the torpedo bat. Dude, I am more and more. I'm getting a little bit irritated, I guess, at the hyper criticism of Shedeur, and I know he brings some of it upon himself simply because of all of his media engagements, and he's the son of Deion Sanders, and the family does love the spotlight. But also, like, I don't hear so many people talking about how he had all this success at Colorado. They had the worst run game in Division I football, like, or maybe the bottom couple in Division I football, and like he still was able to have the success, and a very poor offensive line. He brought success to two different colleges, like granted Jackson State, okay, that's D1 AA, but then making the jump to FBS and having some success there as well. Some success. I think he was a second team All-American. To me, it proves he's a winner, and he's dealt with adversity. And I don't know, man. I would kind of like to see him Yeah, there's debate of if he's gonna how far he's gonna fall. I mean, when we're just talking about him going to the Saints, I would like to see him with the Saints maybe with Kellen Moore there. That might be a good duo. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even just uniform wise, I mean, Mikey's probably going to laugh at this, but black and gold, Shedeur and that
True.
fits great at
Fit.
Colorado. But we're talking about, okay, so to your point right there, him having the experience of going to two different organizations within the college ranks and doing well and bringing them, it's not like Jack State or Colorado were anything prior to the Sanders arriving and him performing, but he
Well,
brought them to
Colorado.
wins. Yeah, he got him a bunch of W's. And also circling back to college basketball, there's a conversation about why Duke lost is because they were never really in situations or games throughout the season where they were having to fight and claw all that often. And to Shedeur Sanders' credit, he has had to do that his entire college career. So he's gone through rigors that a lot of guys who may be at higher end college programs may not have had to go through in gameplay. So, I mean, even like you look at Trevor Lawrence and like he's had a good season here and there. He struggled at other times, but he pretty much dominated throughout college. And, you know, you wonder if adversity may have played a part in that and him just having to learn how to play through certain pieces of adversity in games.
Dude, I think there's actually a lot of credibility to this. I mean, I think we might have talked about this before or maybe off camera, but look at some of our favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. Like Josh Allen, Wyoming, not really necessarily your Alabama, your Clemson, your Ohio State.
Right.
Mahomes, Texas Tech, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson, basketball school, went to Louisville. And so some of these guys who had to deal with sort of kind of middling programs and not get all the benefits. Now I know there's exceptions to this. Joe Burrow with premier organizations, our Alabama guys who are having success in the NFL. But I think if we break it down, it's probably like 50-50. And some of the guys, I mean, I think it's kind of skewed at the top end of the NFL. Some of the guys we like the best, good handful of them, a higher percentage of them went to these type of schools where they had to face adversity. If you're throwing at Alabama, you're throwing at 5-star receivers all the time. You've got 5-star offensive line. And so I think that there's something to be said for guys who have these type of situations in college.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And even Joe Burrow, while he went to great programs, he had personal adversity when he was at Ohio. They had great athletes in front of him, great quarterbacks and everything like that. He had to figure it out mentally and how to jump over to a new place and find a starting spot and all that kind of stuff. So there are different modes and looks to adversity that a lot of people bring. And that's not to say that a lot of guys who are starting at these big programs don't have adversity. It's just to point to Shedeur and say like, oh, he was playing at a lower level or something along those lines, I don't think is necessarily as powerful when he's proven to bring a non-winning program into winning light time and time again.
Absolutely. And I think he recently said that on a press conference or somewhere, some sort of media thing. It's like, hey, I've been at 2 different organizations and we've brought success to both of them. So see, I'm rooting for him. I know he gets a lot of flack as well, but I'm rooting for Shedeur.
Yeah.
So there we have it. National champion in basketball, Florida. Congrats. Masters starting this weekend where we can see just how bad we are at golf, dude, compared to these. Well, every time I watch like the Masters, it's just, I think, all right, last thing. What professional sport do you think if you just got plopped into right now, you would be the furthest away from those athletes?
Tennis.
Part of me thinks tennis. Yeah, shit. Tennis is good. Part of me thinks golf as well.
Yeah. Golf would be right there, but tennis, I think I could get my body to points in which I could hit the ball, but I cannot serve to save my life. I cannot do anything to get the ball over unless I'm lucky. So I could get in position, but I cannot finish.
Says the son of a tennis national champion.
I know. My mom's shaking her head right now.
Sorry, Mrs. Williams. Sorry about your disappointed
Don't
son.
admit that.
All right, there we go. Good stuff. We have an interview coming up, and excited for that. We'll see you guys on the next one.